spiritually, and he's on his path. Gavin Burgess, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you for having me, Jake. It's a pleasure meeting you as well, and it really is sort of the universe that I think brought us together. It feels really kind of uncanny.
I agree. Can you talk about that level of spirituality in you, and ultimately if it was that spirit that called you back to playing music?
I don't know. I think it was one of those things that perhaps was more obvious to everybody else in the room before it was to me. Like I was showing up, and I think it was just out of if I don't show up, I'm gonna feel dead inside. And so I think the way that I've always connected with music, it being this like lifeblood, especially jazz, is something that I was still seeing in people, and it was something that was easier for me to get out of that isolated place by talking to people about that, and by showing up and just sharing the energy, sharing the vibes in the space, and experiencing things together.
I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, can you talk as honestly as you can about, because I just think it's instructive to so many people in this time, why you actually decided to walk away?
Yeah, so I think it was probably, it's a toss-up, because I think I want to take more responsibility for it being my own choice, something that I did to myself. But it's a lot easier to blame a bad band director. It's a lot easier to blame it not being an easy thing to step into. And genuinely, I think I just had a nasty experience with a band director. I thought I was completely unscathed, sort of walking away from it, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, it's my choice. And I think in a lot of different ways, it was an age-old story of an adult sort of abusing and manipulating power in order to get some ends achieved, but not really caring about the sensitivities of children in the process. And so, yeah, I think the more that I've been intuiting and sort of listening to what is going on in here, it kind of became obvious that, it's not about that guy. I mean, he's in the way for sure, but it's about me, and it's about sort of what we were talking about a second ago. Just the more that you're able to own your own realness, the more that the world sort of opens up back for you.
That's right. I mean, and also, this is not a path or, even a recreational thing for somebody that isn't thick-skinned. I mean, there's a difference between criticism, like Lou Donaldson would kick cats off the bandstand if they didn't know how to play a blues shuffle. The cat might be discouraged, they'd go home and shed for a couple days, come back to the next jam session, and you'd let him back up. That's jazz. Abuse is a different deal.
Yeah.
At this point, though, can you talk about your belief and your belief in your concept of faith? Because to me, the cats that really, even though they don't listen to train every day, all day, those cats were playing for world peace.
Yeah.
They had worked through their rudiments. They might play Cherokee for 2 hours and be covered in sweat. But at the end of the day, when they were playing with an ensemble, it was about something so much bigger. It was about humanity.
Yeah, no, easily.
And so where's your head at in terms of even in your mind's eye, that fusion of faith and music?
I think the faith that I was raised in is something that's a little bit illusory. So outside of faith in a religious sort of a sense, I think the faith that I'm choosing to try and pay attention to and find hope for is that there is a better world that's struggling to be born right now. And in a lot of different ways, the people who are playing music, ironically, being incredibly empathic, incredibly sensitive, do have to be thick-skinned in order to make it through. But I think it has to do, again, with this shared experience and this ability to change hearts and minds. How do we actually kill fascists? Outside of reciprocating violence, it's you change hearts and minds. And I think music has an incredible ability to do that through shared experience. And it's kind of like me being trained as a writer. It's kind of crazy to me to think that we just sort of squiggle on a paper and people can decode that information and it causes them to hallucinate exactly what you wanted them to. And I think that's a lot easier to see, at least outside of comparison to music, where it feels a lot more intangible with music. It's this experiential thing, it's this vibrations in the air, but this dude's gonna play some stuff and I'm gonna feel it in my heartstrings, I'm gonna feel it in my chest. It's gonna move me in a way that perhaps I'm not even forwardly cognizant of. And so
absolutely,
faith is that change is constant. That's sort of what I'm seeing. And jazz being this really powerful force in music for that expression towards something better is exactly how I think we're going to get there. It's part and parcel, or maybe not parcel, but definitely part of the parcel.
You know, can you just talk about I also feel like we're in a very dark time spiritually, and I don't know about, I applaud the changing of hearts and minds, but I almost feel that in the collective that you're in and that I'm in as a journalist, it's almost more important to reinforce the vibration of the community itself and not worry about the droids that have been created. Ultimately, jazz was eliminated before the Nazis took over. It's a dangerous...
it's a threat, yeah.
It's a threat. And so the idea is to even get closer to that universal vibration with the people that get it.
Yeah.
Instead of even spending any spiritual energy on the idea of trying to convince or change hearts and minds. I know that is probably the set that we live in, this huge nation, and it's completely polarized. And I guess that's what I was trying to get at before, just that I'm feeling that polarization, even though I don't necessarily want to go out and try to joust with people.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's that. But we lost legendary cat, Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah.
I mean, an amazing piano player, and I was going back to my interview with Bob Moses, Rockalon Bob Moses, the great drummer, and he had a flat on Bleecker Street, and he one day these guys were like, hey, he had a grand piano and a bass and a trap set in there, and these guys were like, hey, can we come, jam at your place, once a week or something like that, and it was Chick Corea, Benny Maupin, Miroslav Vitruvius, and Jack. And he said that, and he goes, can I hang? And they're like, of course, So he got a free concert, but he said that all the cats would just trade instruments. Jack would play upright, and Miroslav would get on the kit. Chick was a great drummer. A lot of people don't know that. He started as a drummer.
Yeah.
So it was, and they played, and Woody Shaw was there too. So it was just all free.
Yeah.
There were no tunes. And then one day Woody brought a tune in. And Chick said, man, we don't need tunes. That's a crutch. And Woody said, what, man? You don't want to play my tune? And it kind of dissolved the whole spirit. they stopped jamming after that.
Yeah.
But my point is, what I'm trying to get at is this idea of, can you talk about this idea of really without a net, the idea of no tunes and reacting to sound with cats who have done their fair share of woodshedding and are just reacting to the sound that they hear?
I think I can relate to that question more as an audience member nowadays. I think I've been...
You haven't necessarily played in a setting where...
No.
Okay.
Not in a number of
Again,
years.
we're talking about, hallowed grounds here. So...
Yeah.
But go ahead as an audience member.
Yeah, more as an audience member, I think it gets spun through my experience in the past. It's still sort of an alienating experience to be in the audience, and it's a sort of a mental challenge to be like, oh, my like spirit's up there on the stage with all of my friends and with this past experience that I have. And so can you rephrase the question for me?
All I wanted you to talk about is the idea of letting go of I see all these beautiful brothers, and again, they don't even have time to rehearse sometimes once before the gig. But I see so many guys who are playing original tunes, and they're on the bandstand, and they're all people we know, and they still feel the need to have an iPad or the sheet music on the stage. And to me, Max Roach and those cats,
that was a limitation.
No magic if there's music on the bandstand.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm kind of getting at with you is where are you at in that terms of vulnerability? Because we're talking about high echelon cats who still want that crutch. And I just feel like what Rockalon was saying in that piece was just, it was like they were getting off. Again, they weren't playing live for an audience, but they were getting off without a net. And I just want to know where you're at in that evolution of your...
I'm down, it's fun, but the way that I was trained is it's hard to walk away from convention. So my first impulse, even as a writer versus being like any sort of musician, it's like, well, I feel like there's this impetus to have fluency, to have this sort of standard that you can work from in order to better express yourself. And literally the flip side is true. Once you've learned how to speak effectively, however effectively is designed or defined for you by you, then you can hang in that sense. It's just, I think in order to get to the point where you're sharing the same sort of ideation about what is being played is something that's difficult. You got to have ears, and I think once you're some crazy cats playing for years and years and years, hours and hours and hours, there is a way that you can hear somebody just change tonally because you're familiar with their playing, and that translates into a communication about what the roadmap is, and that's an auditory signal rather than some sort of visual clue on the roadmap of like a chart.
That's right.
And so it's a limitation, and honest to God, it's something that I think maybe at least in my generation is a product of like some Starve the Beast, teaching to the test, some No Child Left Behind, where all of a sudden it wasn't really about learning in the critical thinking sort of a sense. It was about regurgitation, memorization. So if you can memorize enough tunes and you can memorize enough changes, that means you can play it better. And it's like, that's not at all what that means. You can memorize all the shit that you need, but if you can't understand how they're interconnected, then I think that, and that's kind of where I'm at, trying to understand on basic building blocks, how far apart are notes, what notes are common in between these different sounds. And I think once you're getting that, then you're able to speak a more musical language that's approachable and understandable by other people.
Gavin, the reality is that, jazz was essentially a black subculture for decades.
Resilience and resistance in music.
And so it was, the people kind of thought it was an illegitimate art form. It wasn't in most universities outside of Berkeley.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the cats had the freedom to sort of make up the rules as they went along. And the vocabulary of the music grew. And now it's become completely codified. It's in every school. And there's curriculums. And there's grading, which can be grating.
Yeah.
It can be a grading experience to be graded in this free. And so I kind of want you to talk about your mental toughness as you move into this chapter of your playing. I mean, what's the priority for you? Is it becoming closer to connecting the apparatus with your actual body? Is it being in a band of cats that you love that will busk on the street? Is it going back and learning tunes out of the real book, which, to me is like, that's kind of, whatever it is, where's your mental head at as it relates to this new chapter of Burgess's career?
I think it has to do with the expressivity. I want to be able to better express myself, and I think the how is exactly what you described, getting better fluidity and fluency in the language, and in what the hell this thing feels like on my face and in my arms.
Yeah.
But yeah, truthfully, I think it's a big struggle, and I think honestly it connects to something a little bit more lofty and abstract, and that's the idea of how the fuck we're actually gonna get free. Freedom's calling, and it's coming from inside the house, and I don't think people are quite aware about the kind of illusions that they're under, just how not free they are. And so this is sort of a quest. It feels selfish, but rooted in an idea of being able to. You can't free anybody else or even help be a part of that until you are free yourself in a sort of a thing. And so maybe it's a both and instead of an either or, but I think it's about human expression and knowing myself and figuring out how to connect with people who are seeing the world in a different way, which, there's a lot of people that are seeing it a lot closer to how I'm seeing it from the musician world than from just about any other world that I'm floating through. Different service industries, different elder generations, it's really bizarre just how often the musicians are the ones who get it. The artists are the ones who get it. I don't know if they feel it first and they allow themselves to feel it, or if they're actually just trained up and read up on enough stuff to be able to recognize it, as dark as it is.
No, they're just sentient beings. They're feeling people.
It's possession.
The other thing is that Blood, Sweat, and Tears wrote a sick funk tune in '73 called "Are You Satisfied?" And they're talking about digging graves when people were 64 years old.
Real.
The reality is that there was a natural transition of power from elders to the youth. And now we just have octogenarians and older cats hoarding everything and making just really callous and pathetic decisions instead of passing the torch.
Yeah.
And I guess, before I let you go, I have to ask you, because it resonates with me even as a non-musician. I just feel like I have the easiest job in the world because I don't have to measure up with other cats musically, but what does your shirt mean? Jazz Without Patriarchy.
Oh, yeah. So Misha's close friend and my close friend, Ben Canfield, put me on to somebody that they very much so love, and that's Xiu Feng. Xu Fang is a badass. She absolutely worked with this organization out of Berkeley, and so I like repping it whenever I can, because I think truly, there are a lot of people who are misunderstanding what the point of being a musician is, being a writer is. They're working towards the continuation of the status quo instead of recognizing that we need creativity and imagination to get away from how the status quo is rooted in.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, so aside from, because it could be a matriarchal thing too, you're just talking about a dogma that's attached to the music, that's stifled.
I think it's attached to a lot of different things, but yeah, as it got
as it relates to your shirt though.
Yeah, as it got codified in those institutions, as you were mentioning earlier, there's this impetus again through those institutions being at their base white supremacist and patriarchal. That's where they were born. That's who they were meant to serve. And so it's not like it's broken insofar as it's just not working for everybody. It's working exactly as designed. And so I think this is some sort of an innovation on recognizing that there's a problem and actually committing to actions. What's the point of a land acknowledgement if you're not doing anything to fix how you're literally living on stolen land? It doesn't mean anything. And so this is an organization that's actually doing some work.
What are they doing? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, they're putting together bands that are led and fronted by people who are underrepresented.
Yeah.
So Xi Yufang, being who she is, has gotten a greater opportunity to showcase her compositions. Oh my God. They're amazing. Like, keep an eye out for her, because again, world-class musician, like on the rise.
Oh my God, yeah.
Serious. And so I think there's the way that it works with all the different forms of oppression being like snakes copulating. They're woven together. It's hard to discern which one's which. I think this is one way of just pulling at that sort of, that thread, trying to tease out the nuances of like how we can actually do better. And that starting, of course, with recognizing where you're at and what you're doing, and how to get there from here.